Usually I take a peek at these dynasty trades, but I'm going in completely blind here, okay? So I may be thrown off with a couple of these. We may see some crazy deals, but before we get into it, you better be dropping a like on this video. You better be subscribed to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And of course, if you want to get access to all my Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings, if you want to get access to all the premium content of your favorite Dynasty creators, you can find that on flockfantasy.com. When you sign up to flockfantasy.com with promo code FLOCK, yours truly is going to go through and break down your Dynasty Fantasy Football team with the podcast. But that should be it. Let's go ahead and let's dive into this, and let's start it off with our first deal, which is actually a one quarterback 16-team league. So a very interesting format in general, where we are going to be trading the 103 and in return getting back Rashad Bateman, the 105, and a 2024 second round pick. So I want to be very clear. When you're playing in a 16-team league, you need to be making an adjustment with your overall trade and roster construction strategy. Here in that 16-team format, you're going to be highly incentivized to go through and make deals where you're picking up the extra starting wide receiver, where you're able to go through and trade maybe the best asset in the deal, and in return get back multiple pieces that you can start, because it's going to be very difficult for you to fill out your flex spots each and every week. So I'm always going to lean with the side where you're getting multiple starting pieces in return for that one stud, outside of maybe this one scenario, right? Because if you're looking at how the tiers are going to break down here, at pick 3, you are going to have access to an elite level prospect in a 1 QB format. At pick 3, you're going to be looking at either Bijan Robinson, he's not going to fall. You're going to have either Jahmyr Gibbs or Jackson Smith-Njigba. Whereas at pick 5, you're going to be looking at whoever's left over between Jordan Addison and Quentin Johnston. So in my mind, personally, I think JSN is such a good wide receiver that I see him as a clear tier ahead of what you are going to have with Jordan Addison at pick 5. So while generally I'm all about going through and picking up the extra starter in a 16-team format, I think this is a little bit more difficult. I'm going to say it's a fair deal overall, given the league format that this is in. If you were in a 10-team dynasty league, or if you were in a 12-team dynasty league, there I'd be going 103, no question. But let's jump over to our next deal. It's actually another Jordan Addison trade, where this one is Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, as well as Deontay Johnson versus Miles Sanders, Michael Pittman, and Jordan Addison. Now, in my mind, I think the best asset in this deal will be Travis Etienne. If you are looking at Etienne, it's a running back that's still on his rookie contract. So running back that profiles to be a 3-down player. Now, yes, I will admit, he's not going to be prime Dalvin Cook, prime Ezekiel Elliott, prime Derrick Henry. No, this is a running back that you're hoping he gets to about 70% of his touches in his own backfield. You're hoping that he turns into prime Alvin Kamara, right? A running back that can catch the ball out of the backfield plus give you touchdown upside with his red zone usage. Now, I'm comfortable with the red zone usage and the touchdown upside that we have with Travis Etienne, given the fact that Trevor Lawrence is just dramatically improved compared to what we saw with his rookie season. But what I'm a little bit worried about is the fact that Etienne wasn't as heavily involved as a pass catcher as we initially thought. Clemson, he went out there, he averaged 4 receptions a game his final season. You really thought he was going to be a phenomenal passing down back in the NFL, but in year 2, the Jacksonville Jaguars really didn't throw the ball to Travis Etienne at all, so that's a little concerning. I think it's going to be very dependent on your overall team. I mean, personally, I'm having a very hard time with this deal. As Addison's a super exciting long-term piece. Miles Sanders can probably be a running back 2 for you this next season. Like, if you're looking at underdog drafts right now, Travis Etienne's being drafted in the 4th round this season in comparison to Miles Sanders in the 6th. So the expectations with these backs this next year is not wildly different. Etienne is a little bit older than you'd assume from a running back that came out in 2021 just because he stayed all 4 years at Clemson. So I don't know. Can you help me out with this deal down there in the comment section? I mean, it's kind of crazy. We pulled back-to-back, in my opinion, fair trades out the gate. Now, going over to our next one. This one is going to be Trevor Lawrence, in my mind, a top 6 asset in Dynasty Superflex leagues. TJ Hawkinson, in my mind, a top 3 tight end in Dynasty formats, and a 2nd-round pick versus Jahan Dotson, David Njoku, Bryce Young, and a future first. So I'm not going to spend too much time with this. I understand, yes, Bryce Young is very exciting. We actually have another Bryce Young trade that we're going to be looking at the very end of this video, but I'm going to go Lawrence. I'm going to go Hawkinson. What you'll have to love about Lawrence and Hawkinson is these are two assets that you are completely fine having regardless of if you are a rebuilding team or a contending team. I mean, right now you actually have TJ Hawkinson being drafted as the third tight end in underdog drafts just for 2023. You have Lawrence being drafted as a mid quarterback one. And these are both options that are so damn young that you're fine having them on rebuilding rosters as well. So I'm going to go with the studs. Let's go Lawrence. Let's go Hawkinson. Now, our next trade, we're going to be looking at essentially Calvin Ridley and Devon Achane versus Jordan Addison. And right now, if you're looking at the expectations for Calvin Ridley this next season, they're pretty damn high. I mean, in those underdog drafts, Calvin Ridley is going as a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. He's going in the middle around 3. I'm a little bit hesitant with this just because we really have never seen a wide receiver go from being at the very top of the position, then nothing for 2 years, even if this is a completely unique situation, and then all of a sudden come back to be at the very top of the position. I would say I'm probably going to reset the clock here and take Jordan Addison, take the younger player that has a better overall prospect profile. I mean, if Calvin Ridley is a high-end wide receiver 2 this next season and Addison's a low-end wide receiver 2, given these guys' age, I mean, I can almost guarantee that Addison's going to be the more valuable asset once we get to next season. But let's go over to our next deal. This one is extremely painful as I pull this up because we are going to be trading away our guy, Trey Lance. Here you are trading away Trey Lance, Breece Hall, Brock Purdy, as well as Jameson Williams for Jalen Hurts, as well as Rachaad White. Now, you know, I'm a Trey Lance guy. I want to stand by Trey Lance and say, okay, this is a quarterback that has so much invested into him as a top 3 NFL draft pick that a team gave up 3 first-round picks to go out there and get, that I am very confident that Lance will be a starting quarterback for a NFL team this next season. And given his rushing upside, I think that Lance will be a capable quarterback in fantasy. That's why in underdog drafts currently, when he's literally being drafted as a backup quarterback, yes, Lance is my most drafted player, but we're getting him in round 17, round 18 of underdog drafts. It'd be very cost aware, whereas Jalen Hurts is a locked and loaded top 3 quarterback for the next 5 seasons. Like literally for just 2023 leagues, Jalen Hurts is my quarterback 1. He just signs a long-term extension on top of this where you don't have to worry about his dynasty value anytime soon. So I think you have to go with Jalen Hurts here. Now, going over to our next deal, we're going to be looking at a couple other elite level quarterbacks. You have Joe Burrow versus Patrick Mahomes. And then you have Jamar Chase versus Chris Olave, as well as Jackson Smith-Njigba. Now, I want to be on record that I would prefer Jamar Chase over the pairing of Chris Olave as well as JSN, even if I really like both Jackson Smith-Njigba as well as Chris Olave. But still, I view Mahomes as a quarterback that's in a completely different tier than Joe Burrow. Obviously, both these guys have an immense amount of value for the long term. If you're looking at the short term right now, Mahomes being drafted as the quarterback 1 off of underdog boards, whereas Joe Burrow is about 3 to 4 rounds after, depending on the draft that you are in. I mean, I think if you are selling Patrick Mahomes, you need to be getting a deal that in return, it's a no-brainer, right? If I'm selling Mahomes, I need to be 100% confident that the other team that is acquiring Patrick Mahomes is overpaying. And if I'm not 100% confident that that's the case, you have to default to the Patrick Mahomes side. Here I will go Mahomes. Maybe if that 3rd round pick was a 1st round pick, then we could have a real conversation. But until it isn't, then no. Now let's go over to our next deal. You're essentially selling Alexander Mattison for 2025 first. Now, y'all know right now, I mean, in underdog drafts, we were all about taking Alexander Mattison earlier this season. He was my most drafted running back when you were getting him in round 9. Trust me, I am wanting Alexander Mattison to come through and be a top 5 running back this next season. Oh, nothing would make me happier. But from a dynasty perspective, does Alexander Mattison have long-term value? Nope, he does not. Alexander Mattison is an upside running back for 2023 that is not even guaranteed to be the starter at this point. There's still the possibility they bring in Ezekiel Elliott. There's still the possibility they bring in Leonard Fournette. There's still the possibility that they bring in Kareem Hunt. And with those sharks still circulating the water, until you actually have Alexander Mattison on the field producing as a running back one, in my mind, there's almost no reason you should go through and trade a first-round pick in dynasty leagues to go get him. If you're trading a first-round pick in a dynasty format to go get a running back right now, I want that guy to be Derrick Henry. If you are 100% confident that you are a contending team, sure, if you really want to, you can trade your 2025 first for Derrick Henry. I just don't see the reason you're doing that with Alexander Mattison. Even if he hits, you could still get Mattison during the season for a 2025 first. You're taking on unnecessary risk. Now, of course, if you wanted to draft Alexander Mattison on Underdog, where we're drafting literally every single day, I'm sure y'all see us on the live stream every day, you can go sign up with promo code FLOCK. They'll match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. You'll get my 2023 Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. You'll get a free trial to flockfantasy.com. Check out a ton of cool player props. Get into some massive best ball tournaments. No time commitment at all during the season. It's how I drafted over 700 teams and won $150,000 last year. But let's go over to our next Jackson Smith-Njigba trade, which this is Miles Sanders, JSN, and a future first versus Deebo Samuel, Jordan Love, J.K. Dobbins, and a couple second-round picks. So I'd rather have the first than the seconds. I don't think we need to talk about that too much. If I'm going to look at JSN, Miles Sanders versus Dobbins, Love, Deebo, I understand why someone would go in the direction of Jordan Love here. And if you're a big Jordan Love believer, sure, take that side of the deal. However, personally, I'm just in on Jackson Smith-Njigba, JSN. I don't really know what to expect with Jordan Love. I'll be the first person to admit that I'm not smart enough to know what he'll be this next season or in the long term. But I'm very confident based on our wide receiver prospect model that Jackson Smith-Njigba will be an asset that you can use both from a 2023 perspective, as well as an asset that you can park dynasty value in, where he'll continue to accrue in value going into 2024. So when I'm hesitant and there's a lot of uncertainty on that other side, I'm just going to go JSN. Now, going over to our next deal, super interesting format here, where this is an extreme tight end premium league. So it's best ball, but it's also a league where you have to start two tight ends, and tight ends are getting boosted scoring. So you win your league by having dominant tight ends. And someone trades Andrews for Dalton Kincaid and a 2024 first. So there are a couple different things at play here, of course. I mean, one, the fact that you want to go out there and pay up for tight ends in this format, considering how damn important they are. But two, on the opposite end of the spectrum, I always want to be picking up the extra starter. I always want to be picking up the extra piece in a best ball format. Obviously, in a traditional dynasty league where you're submitting your starting lineup each and every week, it does benefit you if you're going through and if you are getting the asset that you know you're going to be able to put into your starting lineup week in and week out, and you don't have to guess. Whereas, say you're able to bring in another elite level prospect with this 2024 first, and then all of a sudden it's just randomly between those two players, him and Dalton Kincaid, who's going to spike into your starting lineup. I don't know. I kind of like the idea of picking up the two pieces. I think this trade more so comes down to, are you rebuilding? Are you contending? I think you can fall back on that. Now, our next one, you're going to look at Ramondre Stevenson versus Derek Carr and Jerome Ford. I mean, Ford is an interesting underdog best ball pick, but from a dynasty perspective, don't be sitting here thinking that you should be trading things for Jerome Ford. This is Ramondre Stevenson easily. Now, our next deal, you have Justin Jefferson versus Jalen Waddle, Drake London. Trust me, I really like Jalen Waddle. I really like Drake London, but very similar to how we were speaking on Patrick Mahomes previously, if you are trading away a Justin Jefferson level player, you need to make sure that the other owner is overpaying. If that other owner is overpaying, then sure, go ahead, pull the trigger. But if it looks like a quote unquote fair deal on the surface, you got to keep the stud. You got to keep the best asset. I mean, in a one quarterback dynasty format, Justin Jefferson is literally the best asset that you could ever have. Now, going over to our next deal, this one coming out from Danny over there on Vlog Fantasy. As always, happy to see you. My man says, Bryce Young versus two future first. Really interesting deal here. Obviously, Bryce Young was, the 103, if you're in that 12-team Superflex league, trading that 103 for two future first makes sense if you are a rebuilding team, just given the fact that if you're a rebuilding team, you're going to get a lot more flexibility for the long term. Also, if you're that rebuilding team, getting the production of Bryce Young off your dynasty roster is inherently going to improve your odds at getting the 101 and Caleb Williams next year, or getting the 102 and Drake May, getting the 103 Marvin Harrison Jr., whoever it may be. So if you are a rebuilding roster, I mean, I'm kind of fine with whatever side you take. Couple things matter. One, where you expect those first round picks to be. And two, when you expect that you're actually going to turn around and turn into a contender. Now, this is the Calvin Ridley trade that I'm fine with this price. I don't want to be going through and trading Jordan Addison for Calvin Ridley, but here's someone trades the 111 for Calvin Ridley, and that 111 pick ends up being Devon Achane. Here, yeah, go get Ridley if you're a contending team. I mean, right now in those underdog drafts, as we were mentioning, I mean, Calvin Ridley is literally being drafted as like a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. So yeah, let's go ahead. Let's pull the trigger there. But I think that's all I have for you. Thank you so much. And if you enjoyed this video, please go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you want to get in a draft with us, we're drafting every single day on Underdog. And go sign up, use promo code FLOCK, and they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. Plus, you'll get my 2023 Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. You will get a free trial to flockfantasy.com. We're on flockfantasy.com. You can check out all my premium content and all my Dynasty rankings. But thank you again. Really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day, and really hope that we get to see you on the live stream today on the Flock Fantasy YouTube channel.